It was supposed to be a quiet shift. On September 14, 2010, Officer Dana Morrow signed out of the precinct at 6:03 p.m. She wore her navy blue uniform like armor, not just with pride, but with precision. Dana wasn't the kind of officer who rushed things. Her paperwork was always squared away, her radio was always checked, and her route that night was one she'd done a dozen times before. Patrol Sector B-17, a quiet stretch of town just past Route 12. Mostly farmland, a few industrial lots, and one long gravel road leading out to the edge of Dunlow State Forest. Nothing ever happened there. That's why they sent rookies and burned out veterans. But Dana wasn't either. She was 34, with a calm, calculating presence that had earned her respect without noise. Her reports were clear, her arrests minimal, her badge worn but not weathered, and that night, she never came back. Her last check-in came at 7:11 p.m. She'd reported a routine vehicle stop near a construction site off Milner Road. She gave no signs of stress. Her tone was flat, controlled. One black SUV, plate reads 57 Charlie King, initiating approach. And then, silence. Her radio went dead. Dispatch tried to reach her 3 times. No response. Her location wasn't alarming at first. Radios dropped signal out there all the time. It was only when Officer Jensen arrived 20 minutes later that the panic set in. Dana's cruiser was still idling, lights flashing in the dark. The door hung open. The cabin was clean. No signs of a struggle. Her flashlight lay on the grass nearby, her sidearm still holstered in the dash mount, but Dana Morrow was gone. The search that followed engulfed the town. Helicopters scanned the forest for 3 days. Bloodhounds tracked partial scents to the edge of the river but found nothing conclusive. Volunteers walked grid patterns through dense brush. Her face, calm, unsmiling, stared back from posters taped to windows, pinned to gas stations, stapled to telephone poles. Missing officer, Dana Morrow, 34, last seen in uniform. Radio last check-in, 7:11 p.m., Septi 14. Her sister, Claire Morrow, held tearful press conferences. Her captain stood behind the podium stiffly, vowing full resources. For weeks, Dunlow was on edge. The story spread beyond Oregon. Female officer vanishes mid-shift was a headline that stuck. But the longer she stayed missing, the more the edges of that headline frayed. By month 3, the department's tone changed. Whispers started, rumors she might have run, theories bloomed, secret lovers, double lives, debts. None of it stuck. But every day that passed without her narrowed the hope. The case grew cold. And for 12 long years, the files stayed in a locked drawer. No body, no blood, no trace. In September 2022, a road maintenance crew working deep along Old Wren Road in a remote forest tract stopped when a backhoe struck something solid beneath a layer of clay. It wasn't metal piping, it wasn't a buried gas line. It was a steel military ammo box, sealed tight. Curious, they pried it open. Inside was a thick, vacuum-sealed pouch, plastic discolored from age but intact. Within that pouch, wrapped in faded cloth, was a black law enforcement body camera. Label on the side, DM 091410, Dana Morrow. The find was quietly reported to state police. The men on site had no idea what they'd uncovered, not until the case ID was entered. The body cam was sent to forensics in Salem, where the shock deepened. The footage wasn't blank. It wasn't damaged. It was intact, and time-stamped to the very night Dana disappeared. A sealed chain of custody was initiated. The file was pulled from deep storage. Her family was contacted. Internal Affairs reopened the investigation with urgent priority. The 2-1 of Dunlow, which had long buried the name Dana Morrow under layers of polite silence and faded headlines, was suddenly forced to remember. They remembered her face. They remembered the rumors. They remembered the girl who was quiet, principled, and persistent, and who vanished without a trace. Now, after 12 years, her camera had finally come home. And what it captured would change everything they thought they knew. She disappeared on patrol, but her camera kept recording. Before the headlines, before the missing posters, before the rumors that twisted her into someone she wasn't, Dana Morrow was just a woman trying to do her job right. She wasn't flashy. She didn't crack jokes at the precinct or race through red lights for the thrill of it. She didn't showboat in courtrooms or hang her badge on some imagined heroism. If anything, she kept her head down. But the ones who knew her, really knew her, saw how deeply she carried things. Her sister Claire remembers it best. She was always quiet, but not because she didn't care. She cared too much. That was her problem. Claire hadn't spoken publicly in years, not since the last news crew packed up. But when the body cam was recovered and detectives showed up at her door, she knew it would all come rushing back, so she gave them everything she remembered, not just about the night Dana disappeared, but the weeks leading up to it. And something had changed. Dana had been acting different, not erratic, not scared, just distant, sharper, like her mind was always somewhere else, playing out a scene only she could see. "I asked her once if she was okay," Claire said. "She said she was just tired, but it wasn't that. It was like she'd seen something she couldn't unsee." At work, Dana had begun staying late, filing reports no one had asked for. She requested archived case files and old ones, minor ones, that didn't belong to her department. A child assault case from 2008, an overdose that was ruled accidental but had strange inconsistencies. She wasn't assigned to any of them, but she kept asking questions. Tie-ins. Her partner, Officer Luke Maynard, brushed it off at first. Dana had always been thorough, but she started skipping lunches. She'd stare too long at the crime bulletin board, eyes tracing lines that weren't there, and then one day she told him something that stayed buried for 12 years. "Some reports don't make it to paper," she said. "Some things you just have to live with, or fix yourself." Dana had never been the paranoid type, but she began checking her rearview mirror more often, parking in different spots, changing her route home. She started using her personal camera instead of the department-issued one. She wrote physical notes instead of storing everything digitally. And then, one night she told Claire, "If anything ever happens, there's a reason. Promise me you won't let them tell you it was nothing." At the time, it sounded like melodrama, like burnout. Claire didn't press, and she would regret that. Because a week later, Dana was gone, and no one, not even her partner, not even her closest colleagues, knew what she'd been chasing. When Internal Affairs reopened the case in 2022 after the body cam was recovered, they went back to her last few weeks on the job. The logs were mostly clean, routine, but someone high up had made edits. 2 digital access logs were missing entirely, and her final request to check the 2008 child abuse case, denied. No reason listed. Her personal locker had been cleaned out, scrubbed, repainted. Unusual for a missing officer's space. No notes remained. Just her badge number etched faintly into the back of the steel door, Nash 4147. They asked Luke Maynard again what she'd been working on. He said he didn't remember. He said she never confided in him. But a receptionist recalled something odd. The day before Dana vanished, she'd left a manila envelope on the captain's desk marked simply, DM Marsh Sepp, to 14, 1900 HRs. That envelope was never found. Now, in the present, that timeline matters, because the recovered body cam had the exact same timestamp. Sept 14, 2010, 1900 HRs. It wasn't coincidence. Dana had planned something that night. She had intended to go somewhere, meet someone, or document something, and the body cam, sealed, hidden, buried for over a decade, had gone with her. So why had no one mentioned it? Why had the footage disappeared? Why had her own department declared her presumed deceased after just 14 months, despite no body ever being found? Claire believes she knows why. She was chasing something no one else wanted uncovered, and someone made sure she never made it back. In the days that followed the camera's recovery, a tech team worked around the clock to extract every second of footage. They carefully decrypted corrupted files, enhanced audio, restored timestamps. And on the third day, something appeared. A 36-minute continuous clip, dated September 14, 2010, starting at 7:03 p.m., 12 minutes before her final radio transmission. The footage began with Dana driving slowly through an unlit industrial stretch on Milner Road, the same route listed on her final call. She's calm, focused. Then, she speaks into the recorder, not the radio. Personal log, Dana Morrow. If you're hearing this, I need this recorded somewhere. There's something happening, and no one's going to believe it. She pauses. I don't know who to trust, so I'm recording it for whoever finds this. Her hands tighten on the wheel, her breath is measured. Then she repeats, if I don't make it back, this is why. The clip cuts to black, not corrupted, just stops. But it was enough to confirm she knew something. Enough to show her disappearance wasn't random, and enough to reopen everything the department thought was buried. 12 years later, the camera surfaced, and with it, her voice. It was pure accident, no anonymous tip, no sudden confession, just a crew of county workers clearing brush deep in the Dunlow State Forest, 104 miles from where Officer Dana Morrow was last seen. The team had been contracted to remove debris from an overgrown firebreak trail. Standard procedure: trees, rocks, discarded trash, the sort of job no one ever remembered after. But at around 2:17 p.m. on a humid September afternoon, a small backhoe stopped abruptly. The claw had struck something hard. At first they thought it was a buried propane tank. The metal was rounded, dented, oddly shaped. But as they cleared the mud and moss, it revealed itself, a military-style ammunition box, half rusted but sealed shut with an old chain and padlock. Someone had taken the time to wrap it in 2 layers of tarp and bury it beneath a foot of clay and rock. Someone who didn't want it found. They loaded it into the truck, thinking it might be old hunting gear, maybe even something dangerous. They called the sheriff's department, as protocol required. A deputy arrived within the hour. When the box was pried open at the edge of the trail, the deputy's hands paused. Inside, wrapped in a thick vacuum-sealed plastic pouch, was a body-worn police camera. Standard issue, black-cased, the kind only introduced statewide in 2009. The side was marked with faded silver marker, DM 091410. It took only minutes to confirm what the initials meant. Dana Morrow, September 14, 2010. The site was shut down immediately. Photos were taken, a full forensic unit was called in, and just like that, after 12 years of silence, the coldest file in Dunlow County's system was reopened. By that evening, news had already begun to spread in hushed tones. Detective Caroline Marks, now head of the Cold Cases Division, was the first to receive the call from the field. Her hands went cold. Dana's case had been the first one she'd read when joining the department a decade earlier. She had been a rookie then, told not to waste her energy on ghosts. Now the ghost had come back. The camera was transported to a secure lab in Salem. Technicians carefully cut the vacuum seal and powered it up. It buzzed, then blinked. And then, the screen lit. Not only was it intact, the camera had never been erased. It contained exactly 7 video clips. 6 were routine: traffic stops, log entries, short observations. But the final file, time-stamped 09/14/2010, was 36 minutes long. It was Dana's last night. The one the department had claimed held nothing unusual. Marks immediately locked down access. Only 3 people were allowed to view the footage that first day: Marks herself, the department's internal tech liaison, and 1 representative from state oversight. A sealed room. No cell phones, audio recorded, everything documented. And as the first frame played, the room fell silent. The video began with Dana inside her cruiser. It was dusk, the sky barely lit, shadows stretching across the empty road ahead, Milner Road, the last place she'd been seen. She adjusted her rearview mirror, then tapped the camera. Personal log, Dana Morrow, September 14th. If something happens to me tonight, this is why. Her voice was steady, but her breathing had a rhythm that only trained ears would notice, tightly controlled, like someone trying not to panic. The cruiser slowed. She flipped off her headlights. Up ahead, something moved. A black SUV, parked at the far end of the gravel lot, near the edge of the abandoned Milner industrial site. The vehicle had no markings, no plates. Dana zoomed in slightly with the dashboard cam. 2 men were outside. They were dragging a third, unconscious or restrained, into the shadows. Dana didn't call dispatch. She didn't reach for her weapon. She whispered only one thing. "That's Redden." The name froze everyone in the room. Sergeant Travis Redden, her former supervisor. Highly decorated, retired with honors in 2013. Never linked to any investigation, no black marks on his record. A man the department still invited to speak at Academy events. In the video, Dana shifts the cruiser into park and lowers her body quietly out of frame. The image jitters as she moves, clearly trying to stay hidden. Her breathing picks up. In the corner of the screen, the SUV's back door opens. The men speak, but the audio is too faint to catch clearly. A word repeats, "Cleared." Then, suddenly, one of them freezes. His head turns, looks toward the woods. The camera swings rapidly. Dana is backing up. "They saw me," she whispers. Then, a jolt. The frame goes wild. Darkness, leaves, a footfall, a curse in the distance, and then silence. The video ends. No scream, no gunshot. Just black. Back in the sealed viewing room, no one spoke. Detective Marks sat with her jaw clenched, hands wrapped around her pen. Her notes stopped halfway down the page. The implications weren't just disturbing, they were explosive. A decorated officer, caught on footage, engaged in what appeared to be an off-the-books detainment, or worse, and Dana, unknowingly recording it all. The same night she vanished. The department's silence after that moment wasn't a cover anymore. It was complicity. The question wasn't whether something had happened to Dana. It was who helped make it disappear. And why the footage, the most important piece of evidence, had been deliberately hidden 100 miles from town, buried deep in the woods. Someone had wanted it lost, but it had surfaced. For 12 years they claimed she vanished into thin air, but Dana never stopped recording, and now the world was finally watching. The footage was re-watched over a dozen times, frame by frame, pixel by pixel. Every flicker of movement, every muffled voice, every shadow that crossed the lens, dissected under forensic scrutiny. Detective Caroline Marks knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about a missing officer anymore, it was about trust in the C badge, the system, and those sworn to protect it. And what the camera revealed was not a disappearance. It was a witnessed event. One that someone had worked very hard to bury. The raw footage, 36 minutes in total, played like a slow-building nightmare. It began normally, Dana's cruiser gliding down Milner Road, the empty gravel lot coming into view. Then the moment when her breath caught. A black SUV, parked, engine off, no tags. 2 men, dragging a third. From the moment Dana whispered, "That's Redden," the narrative fractured. Because Sergeant Travis Redden wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't even on shift that night. According to department records, he'd signed out at 5:42 p.m. and gone home. But the camera caught his face. Clean-shaven, grim, lit briefly by the SUV's dome light. He wasn't in uniform, no badge, just a black jacket with an inner holster barely visible beneath the fold. The second man beside him remained unidentified, partially obscured, taller, wearing gloves. He never looked directly at the camera, but his body language was efficient, practiced. They weren't panicked, they were following a plan. And the man they dragged? Unclear. The footage never captured his face, only torn jeans, bare feet, duct tape around the wrists. At timestamp 1907, Dana exits the vehicle. Quiet, careful. The body cam dips as she steps off the gravel shoulder into a shallow ditch. Her breathing slows. She kneels, zooming the lens with practiced control. Unmarked vehicle, 2 male subjects. One appears restrained, approaching from southeast, recording visual evidence. Then, movement. The taller man glances up suddenly, pauses, points toward the tree line. Redden follows his gaze. "We've got eyes," one of them says. Dana curses softly. She ducks behind a downed log, scrambling backward. Her camera jolts, jostled as branches snap beneath her boots. She whispers, breathless, "They saw me. I'm not armed. I'm not ready for this." There's a distant shout, and then a sound no one expected. A gunshot, sharp, muffled. On. The body cam flips, hits the ground. The image rotates. Sky, trees, the blur of Dana's shoulder as she ducks. She doesn't scream, doesn't cry out, but she runs. The audio catches it all. Footsteps crashing through leaves, the whip of brambles, the snap of someone close behind. "Drop it," a male voice shouts. "I didn't see anything," Dana yells back. "Just let me go." The sound cuts. Then, silence. For 3 full minutes the camera records nothing but forest floor, moss, soil, the faint glint of metal, no more voices, no more movement, and finally a faint click, as if someone had picked up the camera, looked at it, and turned it off. The video ends at 19:39 p.m., exactly 28 minutes after Dana's final radio check-in. What happened between those 2 moments would become the centerpiece of the reopened investigation. The original files were triple verified by digital forensic analysts. No signs of manipulation, no glitches, no deepfakes. The footage was real. And it had been deliberately removed, sealed, and hidden, 100 miles from the scene. So the question wasn't what happened. It was who knew, and who helped make it disappear. When confronted with the footage, retired Sergeant Travis Redden could not be reached. He had moved to Arizona in 2015 after a brief, unexplained leave of absence. There were no charges against him, no allegations on record. His reputation, until now, remained clean. But when state investigators arrived at his address, they found the home abandoned. Mail piling up, a car missing. Redden was gone. The second man in the footage was still unidentified. Detectives began quietly running facial recognition against law enforcement and corrections databases, as well as known private security contractors. They also searched missing persons reports for the restrained man in the video, but nothing matched yet. No one, not Yi Ta, had been reported missing that night who fit the physical description. Unless, of course, he was never meant to be reported. But the biggest breakthrough came when analysts enhanced the audio. From the footage's final seconds, a whispered phrase, faint, but there. A male voice, deep and gravelly, right before the feed cuts. "Take it. Deep woods. You know where." Simple, commanding, deliberate. Whoever took that camera didn't destroy it. He buried it. Why? Some believe it was panic. Some say it was a warning, a time capsule planted for insurance. Others, like Detective Marks, believe Dana had backup files, and they needed to control the narrative. Because if she had other evidence, this camera was only the beginning. By week's end, the footage had been leaked. A former department employee anonymously sent stills to a local reporter. Within 48 hours, the case was national news again. Commentators speculated. Former officers gave interviews. And online sleuths tore apart every frame, every pixel, every shadow. But nothing could prepare the public for what came next. A second copy of the footage appeared, slightly longer, with extra seconds at the beginning. A whisper from Dana, off camera, before the SUV even appears. Backups in the envelope, locker 17, just in case. She hadn't trusted anyone, not her supervisor, not her partner. She had hidden another piece of the truth somewhere, and left breadcrumbs. Now the hunt wasn't just for what happened to Dana. It was for what she left behind. They tried to erase the footage, but Dana had already written her own ending. The video was out. Not in pieces, not in rumor. The full 36 minutes. Uploaded, mirrored, archived. It spread like a virus. By sunrise, it had been viewed over 4.2 million times. By noon, the Dunloe Police Department's tip line crashed under the volume of calls. At first, the official statement was predictable. The footage is being verified. There is no conclusive evidence of misconduct. We ask the public to refrain from speculation. But the public didn't wait. Not after watching a respected officer whisper, "If I don't make it back, this is why." Not after watching her vanish into the trees. Not after hearing a voice say, "Take it, deep woods, you know where." Within 48 hours, 3 things happened that shattered the department's attempt at silence. First, a journalist from the Oregon Ledger, Madison Frey, published a whistleblower interview. The source, anonymous but confirmed to be a former department aide, claimed that Dana's final manila envelope had absolutely existed. It had been placed on the captain's desk the morning of her disappearance, and it vanished within hours. Inside it, according to the source, were printed screenshots from private traffic cam feeds, a handwritten timeline of Redden's off-duty movements, and a list of names, 5 in total, with circled dates beside each. The aide had only seen the top page, but one name stood out: Officer Luke Maynard, Dana's longtime patrol partner. Second, an independent forensic firm, hired by a victims' rights group, reviewed the camera data. They confirmed something everyone missed. A second camera ID had been briefly pinged in Dana's cruiser console, just for 14 seconds, likely her dash cam, which according to inventory logs had been removed for maintenance 2 days after she disappeared. That unit was never recovered. It wasn't even listed as missing. Someone had simply erased its existence. Now, paired with her Bodycam footage, this proved intent, not just accident. Third, a woman stepped forward. Sarah Green, a retired night dispatcher from the Dunlow precinct, contacted state investigators. Her statement was brief, but devastating. That night, around 7:45 p.m., I got a call from Redden's private cell. He told me not to log Dana's last check-in. He said she was doing an off-book interview and might not respond for a while. I was too. Old quote, "Let this one slide." I didn't question it. You didn't question Redden. The department couldn't contain it anymore. A press conference was called, flanked by state officials. The Dunlow police chief, Robert Kellerman, appeared visibly shaken. For the first time in 12 years, Dana Morrow's name was spoken with clarity. "We now believe Officer Morrow may have uncovered internal misconduct. Her disappearance is no longer considered unresolved. It is from this day forward an active criminal investigation." The reporters shouted. Questions flew. One cut through. "What about Sergeant Redden?" The chief's response was clipped. "We are attempting to locate him," but the public had already drawn its own conclusions. Social media exploded with theories. Justice for Dana trended globally. Independent researchers mapped every known movement of Redden's career. Online sleuths compared audio clips, matched voices, traced addresses. Then another shockwave hit. A local motel manager came forward with security footage, dated just 5 days before the body cam was recovered. A man, wearing a ball cap and sunglasses, had paid cash for a room under the name Martin Ellis. He stayed 2 nights, kept to himself, car never moved, then vanished. The footage clearly showed him loading something heavy into the trunk, matching Redden's build, his gait, his posture. It wasn't proof, but it was close. Meanwhile, Detective Caroline Marks focused on the one thing Dana had left behind, the line from the leaked footage. Backups in the envelope, Locker 17, just in case. Marks requested every internal locker audit from 2010. Only 3 lockers were logged as unassigned after Dana's disappearance. Locker 17 wasn't one of them. It was marked closed, reassigned, and later scrapped due to rust damage, but the disposal form, signed off by Officer Luke Maynard. Marks requested a formal interview. Luke didn't object. He sat calmly in the small windowless room, hands folded. At first it was routine. He expressed shock at the footage, sadness of Dana's loss. He said she had been troubled in her last months, suggested she was possibly paranoid or under too much pressure. But when Marks asked directly about Locker 17, his demeanor shifted. "I don't recall. It was listed under your name. Must be a clerical error. You personally signed the removal slip." He leaned back. His face tightened. "If you think I know what happened, you're wrong." Marks didn't flinch. "I don't think you know what happened, Luke. I think you helped make it happen." Silence. No denial. Just a long stare. And then, "Am I under arrest?" Not yet. The department now faced public pressure from all sides. The governor ordered a multi-agency task force to take over the case. The FBI opened a formal investigation. And quietly, behind closed doors, a grand jury was assembled. 12 years of silence. Shattered in a single week. Dana's name, once whispered in pity, now stood at the center of a growing storm. But one question still loomed above it all. What was in that envelope? Because if Dana had documented more, if she'd copied, saved, hidden something else, it meant the truth hadn't just survived. It was waiting. She left the truth behind. And now, the walls were starting to speak. Locker 17 was never meant to be found. According to official records, it had been reassigned, emptied, and disposed of over a decade ago. The logs were clean, the metal locker was listed as rust-damaged, removed from the precinct in early 2011, and discarded at a county surplus yard 2 towns over. Except, it wasn't. Detective Caroline Marks had grown used to lies wrapped in paperwork, but this one was sloppy, almost rushed. She'd reviewed the department's maintenance records for years. The logs for Locker 17 were different. The handwriting didn't match other disposal entries. The removal slip had no corroborating office. Sir's signature, and strangest of all, the final transfer order was signed on a Sunday, a day the precinct's operations office was never open. It was a fake, a cover, and the timing was no coincidence. The locker had been removed 48 hours after Dana Morrow disappeared. Marks followed the thread. The surplus yard listed in the documents had changed ownership 3 times since 2011. Most inventory had been auctioned, melted down, or recycled. There was no record of any locker, no ID tag, no serial number trail. But a clerk, a man named Tony Hayes, who had been working at the yard since he was 19, remembered something odd. "Yeah, there was one. Big gray locker, way heavier than the others, didn't rattle. No keys either. Took 3 guys to load it onto the truck. Nobody knew why." "Where'd it go?" Marks asked. Tony scratched his head. "Didn't go anywhere. We set it aside. Thought the department might come back for it." And they never did. It was still there, covered in grime, half buried behind stacks of rusted filing cabinets and warped shelving. Locker 17, scratched, dented, padlocked, but intact. Marks stood in silence for a full minute before she spoke. "Get me a crowbar." Inside was a single item, a metal toolbox sealed with duct tape and labeled in permanent marker. "Morrow, do not destroy." Marks drove it back to the station herself. She didn't trust a single transport chain. She didn't even tell her supervisor. The toolbox sat on her passenger seat like a loaded weapon. Back in her office, she opened it slowly. Inside were 3 things: a burned CD in a plastic sleeve, a manila envelope labeled Redden, Maynard, and a folded handwritten letter marked "Only." "If something happens to me, give this to Natalie." Marks didn't recognize the name at first. Natalie? Then it clicked. Natalie Reed, Dana's oldest friend, a former patrol officer herself. She had left the force in 2009 under unclear circumstances, quietly, without fanfare, no formal complaints, no ceremony. Marks pulled the personnel file. Natalie had been Dana's academy roommate. They were inseparable for years. Then something changed. Dana stayed. Natalie vanished. The file listed a forwarding address, a small P.O. box in Sheridan. Marks made the drive that night. Natalie Reed was living in a 2-room trailer on the edge of town, teaching self-defense classes at a women's shelter. Her hair was shorter now, gray at the edges, but her eyes, sharp, alert, hadn't dulled one bit. She listened without interruption as Marks explained. Then she sat down slowly on the front steps, staring at the envelope in her hands. "I told her to stop digging," Natalie said quietly. "Told her Redden wasn't the only one." Marks didn't interrupt. "She found something in 2009, a file. I don't know what it said. She never told me, but she changed after that. Said there were names she didn't trust. She carried a second notebook, kept it on her at all times. And then? She said if anything happened, someone would find it. But I thought she meant her journal. I didn't know about this. Natalie opened the envelope. Inside was a series of printed photographs, grainy, zoomed-in images of officers exchanging envelopes, standing near unmarked cars, pulling files from secure evidence rooms. There were timestamps, handwritten notes, diagrams. Dana had been building a case. One of the photos was chilling. It showed Officer Luke Maynard exiting a private residence belonging to a former narcotics informant 3 days before that man turned up dead in a suspicious overdose. There were other names, other meetings. It wasn't just Redden. It was a ring, and Dana had documented it all. The CD was the final piece. When Marks inserted it into her laptop, a simple folder appeared, Truth, Backup 091417. Inside were video clips, copied from dash cams Dana had privately downloaded from patrol units, notes on missed detail, drug evidence, a memo she'd never submitted, accusing unnamed officers of evidence tampering, and a voice recording, Dana's voice. If you're listening to this, I'm gone, or I had to run. Either way, I'm sorry I couldn't finish this. But it's real. Redden's part of it. Maynard, too. Maybe more. The night of the 14th, I saw something I wasn't supposed to. I don't know if they'll let this get out, but if even one person hears this, maybe that's enough. Don't let them erase me. Mark sat back, stunned. Everything they needed to indict was here, not just for Dana's disappearance, but for years of buried corruption, the department's darkest corners, the names behind locked doors. And the woman who exposed it? She had trusted no one, except one person, Natalie. The case was reopened publicly within 72 hours. Formal charges were filed against Officer Luke Maynard for obstruction of justice. A statewide manhunt was launched for Travis Redden. The FBI joined. The media exploded. But for the first time, the headlines weren't just about what happened to Dana. They were about what she left behind. She disappeared, but she didn't vanish. She prepared. She documented. She endured. And now, her voice was louder than ever. The hunt for Travis Redden spread like wildfire. Within hours of Dana's files going public, and his image flashing across national news, tips flooded in. Some were useless. Others were possible sightings from different states: Montana, Idaho, northern Nevada. The manhunt stretched across borders. But what stood out wasn't just where he was. It was how many people had protected him. The internal investigation, now backed by the FBI and DOJ, widened its scope. 12 former and active officers were placed on administrative leave. 4 resigned before they could be questioned. 2 attorneys, both former prosecutors who'd worked hand-in-hand with Dunlow PD, were subpoenaed. And in every case, the same patterns emerged. Traffic cam footage that went missing, evidence logs falsified, key cards that gave unauthorized access to Acre files, surveillance camera loops triggered manually from inside the station. It wasn't just negligence, it was systemic, and Dana had known. Her envelope, the one she left behind, named 5 key individuals. Only 2 were still active by 2023. The others had quietly retired, taken consulting gigs, or vanished into obscurity. But now, no one was safe from scrutiny. Meanwhile, the man at the center of it all, Travis Redden, had vanished again. Last confirmed sighting, a roadside gas station in eastern Washington. Surveillance footage showed him entering the store, wearing a ball cap, oversized jacket, and gloves. He didn't buy anything, just used the restroom, then walked out. The security guard who reviewed the footage said one thing that stood out. He didn't look panicked. He looked calm, like someone following a plan. Detective Caroline Marks believed the same. This wasn't a man on the run. It was a man activating a final fallback, the kind only someone inside the system would know how to execute. Natalie Reed, meanwhile, had become an unwilling public figure. When her name leaked as Dana's trusted friend, the person who held the files, media attention descended. News vans parked near her trailer. Internet sleuths dug through her past. Some even accused her of being part of the cover-up. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she sat for one single 30-minute interview, aired on primetime television. Dana wasn't paranoid. She wasn't unstable. She was smart. And she was alone, because nobody in that department had the courage to stand beside her. But she stood anyway. Her words echoed across every living room. And something changed. Retired Officer Leon Hart, 76, had moved to Arizona 5 years earlier. He hadn't spoken publicly about Dana's case since it happened, but after watching Natalie's interview, he contacted the task force. "I know where the backup locker key is," he said. Dana's spare evidence key, one never logged in the system, had been left inside a hollowed-out law book in the department archives. Just as she'd said in her voice memo, "You'll know it when you see it. The law's always had a hole in it." The key opened a separate cabinet in the basement archives. Inside, more flash drives, photo negatives, transcripts of phone calls between officers and known drug traffickers, a list of locations where Dana believed evidence had been buried, including an empty city lot, directly across from the old training academy. On June 19th, cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar uncovered a sealed storage locker buried beneath concrete. Inside, one burned uniform, a cracked police radio, and what remained of a female body. Dental records confirmed it. Officer Dana Morrow. The revelation shocked even the most hardened investigators. Until now, there had still been hope. Hope that she'd run, disappeared by choice, maybe even started a new life somewhere in secret. But now that hope was gone. The last truth was written in her bones. She hadn't been scared for herself. She'd been scared for the story to die with her. The public outrage became a wildfire. Protests erupted in Dunlow. The police chief resigned. 2 city council members were voted out within weeks. State officials launched a formal inquiry into every closed case that Redden, Maynard, or their partners had touched between 2005 and 2010. 27 cases were reopened, 7 convictions overturned, and 3 families received public apologies for wrongful charges. But the cost couldn't be undone. A woman had died doing the right thing. She'd asked for backup, and no one had come. The final act came weeks later. Travis Redden's car was found in a remote forest in northern Idaho, abandoned at a trailhead known for off-grid hikers. Inside there was no note, no wallet, no blood, just a folded photo of Dana in uniform. Some believe he died in the wilderness, others believe he's still out to here, hiding in plain sight. But the hunt remains open, and so does the wound. Today, the town of Dunlow is different. The precinct where Dana once worked is now named Morrow Station, a quiet reminder of what was lost. Her locker, still sealed, is preserved inside a glass case beside her photo. And every cadet who trains there is told the same thing on day 1. She saw what others ignored. She spoke when it was dangerous. She stood when no one else did. Justice didn't come the day Dana vanished. It came 12 years later, when her silence spoke louder than every badge around her. 12 years after her final patrol, Dana Morrow was buried with full honors. The town of Dunlow shut down that day. Shops closed, schools dismissed early. Thousands gathered in silence along Main Street as her casket, draped in the American flag, was carried slowly past the station where she once worked, now renamed Morrow Precinct. But this wasn't just about a fallen officer. This was about truth, a truth that had been buried, literally, beneath concrete, silence, and fear, and a woman who refused to let it die with her. Grace Ramirez, a 23-year-old rookie cadet, stood in the front row during the service. She'd joined the academy because of Dana. Her case was the reason she studied law, the reason she wore a badge. "I never knew her," she said in a local news interview, "but I owe her everything, because she taught me what courage really looks like." All across the country, similar sentiments echoed. Police departments re-examined cold cases. Advocacy groups held candlelight vigils. Dana's face, once just a fading photo in a missing persons archive, now appeared in textbooks, trainings, documentaries. She had become a symbol, not of tragedy, but of resistance. 1 year after the Bodycam footage surfaced, the state passed the Morrow Act, legislation requiring evidence. Erie officers' final dispatch and Bodycam footage to be automatically uploaded to a public database unless a judicial exception was granted within 72 hours. It was the first law of its kind. It didn't bring Dana back, but it made sure no voice like hers could vanish unnoticed again. Back in Dunlow, a small museum exhibit was created inside the old precinct's front lobby. On display, her uniform badge, still slightly bent, the crowbar Detective Caroline Marks used to open Locker 17, pages from Dana's handwritten notes, and one screen that plays the final Bodycam footage. Not the full 36 minutes, but a 3-minute excerpt carefully selected by her mother, just enough to honor, not enough to traumatize. Visitors leave flowers, sometimes letters. One reads, "I left the force. You gave me the strength to admit what I saw." Another says, "I believed the rumors. I'm sorry. You deserved better." But one note, scrawled in a child's handwriting, sits framed behind glass. "Thank you for being brave." It was signed, Ellie, age 9. For Natalie Reed, Dana's closest friend, the closure came slowly. She stayed in town, not because she had to, but because she felt it was her duty. She helped launch the Morrow Foundation, which provides legal aid and whistleblower support to officers across the country who come forward with internal abuse reports. She never remarried, never sought recognition. "Some names don't need statues," she said once. "They just need to be remembered with the truth." Detective Caroline Marks eventually transferred out of Dunlow, but before she left, she walked the forest trail near where Dana's car was found. At a clearing, someone, no one knew who, had planted 12 oak trees, each marked with a name. Dana's was the first. The others were for those whose stories had come to light because of her case. Victims, wrongly accused suspects, even another officer who had disappeared under suspicious circumstances in 1998. The Grove became a place of quiet reflection. No signs, no tours, just truth, growing slowly, quietly, into something stronger than silence. The final open thread in Dana's story remains unsolved. Travis Redden was never found. No confirmed sightings, no trail, no final message. Some believe he died in the woods. Some say he lives under a new name, watching from afar. Others believe he was protected, spirited away by others still clinging to the shadows Dana tried to drag into the light. But those theories don't carry the weight they once did, because Dana's legacy doesn't end with his capture. It ends with her being heard, 12 years too late, but just in time for the future. Final reflection. Narrator voice. Some stories never get told. Some warnings get silenced. Some names fade into a paragraph in a forgotten file. But not hers. Dana Morrow didn't just leave behind a badge, a locker, a letter. She left behind a signal. And now, we're listening.